Jax Vorton stood on what passed for a balcony in the satellite metropolis of Zircon 9. Well, it used to be a balcony, but now it was more like a precarious ledge threatening to send him to an untimely meeting with the ground below. The place had seen better days, probably around the time the universe was still trying to figure out the whole Big Bang thing. "Remind me again, why the hell are we doing this?" A voice, dripping with skepticism and more than a hint of sarcasm, came from behind. It was Tessa, Jax's second-in-command, a woman who'd run out of patience 3 planets ago. "Because, Tessa," Jax replied, not bothering to turn around, "we're trying to show the Zentari that humans aren't just here to clean their latrines or entertain them with our delightful knack for dying spectacularly." "Ah, yes," Tessa said, her tone as dry as the Zircon 9 atmosphere, the intergalactic equivalent of a middle finger. "Very human of us." The Zentari Empire's Decathlon of Empires was a sporting event designed to remind everyone else in the galaxy just how inferior they were. And humans? Well, humans were the underdogs. Except this wasn't some feel-good sports movie where the scrappy team overcomes all odds. No, in reality, humans were more like the bug splattered on the Zentari's windshield. Jax took a deep breath, as if trying to inhale some courage along with the smog-filled air. "Check on the others, will you? If we're going to face certain death, might as well do it as a team." "Sure thing, Captain," Tessa said, with the enthusiasm of someone asked to count sand grains. She turned and made her way through the ruins that were once luxury accommodations for beings that didn't consider a bed of nails to be an upgrade. Jax watched her go, wondering if any of his team actually believed they could pull this off. Hell, even he was skeptical, and he was the one who signed them up for this death march. Maybe it was the adrenaline, or maybe it was just the human spirit refusing to be outdone by a bunch of tentacled overlords. The Zentari were a charming bunch, in the way that a black hole was charming, inescapable and likely to rip you to shreds. They'd taken over Earth a few decades back, and humanity had responded the way it always did, with stubbornness and an inappropriate sense of humor. Jax found himself chuckling at the irony of it all. Here they were, trying to prove humanity's worth by participating in an event meant to showcase their incompetence. It was the kind of logic only humans could come up with. As Jax made his way inside, he nearly collided with Vin, their team's engineer, and a man whose personality could best be described as constantly on the brink of a nervous breakdown. "Jax," Vin yelped, looking like he'd just seen a ghost, an impressive feat considering ghosts didn't exist, but if they did, they'd definitely haunt this place. "Vin, breathe, you're not dying yet," Jax said, clapping a hand on Vin's shoulder. "Yet being the operative word," Vin mumbled, running a hand through hair that hadn't seen a comb this century. "The gear's all set, though I'm pretty sure half of it will explode the moment we touch it." "Exploding's good. It's a distraction," Jax quipped, patting Vin on the back before moving deeper into the building. The makeshift training room echoed with the sound of grunts and curses, a symphony of human resilience and frustration. The rest of the team was there, each member a testament to humanity's ability to persevere through sheer stubbornness. Mara, their strategist, was hunched over a map that might as well have been a child's drawing for all the good it did. "So, here's the plan," she announced, not bothering to look up. "Step 1, try not to die. Step 2, see Step 1. "Solid plan," Jax said, nodding. "And if that fails," Mara finally looked up, eyes glinting with the kind of mischief that often preceded a really bad idea. "Improvise." "Improvise," Tessa echoed, entering the room with an expression that suggested she was rethinking all her life choices. "Is that code for scream and hope they shoot each other? Worked last time," Mara said with a shrug. Jax took a moment to look around at his team. They were ragtag, underfunded, and possibly a little insane, but they were his ragtag, underfunded, possibly insane team. "All right, listen up," he began, trying to muster all the gravitas of a leader who wasn't internally panicking. "I know the odds are stacked against us, And by stacked, I mean we're buried under them like a mountain of alien refuse, but we're humans. And if there's one thing we're good at, it's being a pain in the ass. Vin raised a hand. I think I speak for everyone when I ask, are we really doing this? Damn right, we are, Jax replied. Because if we don't, who will? The room was silent for a beat, the weight of their collective insanity settling in. Then slowly, like a virus spreading, the laughter began. It was a desperate, hopeless kind of laughter, but laughter nonetheless. All right, Jax said, once the room had quieted down. Let's go remind the Zentari why they hate us so much. The team dispersed, each member returning to their tasks with a renewed sense of purpose, or at least a renewed sense of impending doom. As Jax followed them out, he caught sight of the Zentari's flagship hovering ominously in the distance, a reminder of the Empire's ever-present threat. It was a sleek, menacing thing, all sharp angles and glowing lights, a real testament to the Zentari's taste for intimidation. Nice ship, Jax muttered, crossing his arms. Compensating for something, somewhere in the distance an explosion echoed, a not-so-gentle reminder of the chaos that awaited them. Jax grinned, feeling the adrenaline course through his veins. All right, team, he whispered to himself. Let's give these tentacled bastards a run for their money. With that, he turned away from the window, heading back to his team, who were undoubtedly up to something that could either win them the decathlon or blow up half the city. Either way, it promised to be entertaining. Cliffhangers be damned. Jax knew one thing. When it came to humans versus the universe had better watch its back. The Zentari Empire's decathlon of empires was the cosmic equivalent of a reality TV show where the stakes were your dignity, and the prize was not dying an embarrassingly public death. The other species had shown up with their usual flair, luminous armor, gravity-defying hairdos, and more tentacles than a hentai flick. The humans? Well, we brought duct tape and a death wish. Jax Vorton, against all human logic, had managed to assemble a team that was ready for the tournament. Ready being a relative term, as in they weren't actively fleeing. They gathered in what could charitably be called the staging area, a jumbled array of equipment and hope wrapped in a big all question mark. All right, listen up, Jax said, trying to sound like a motivational speaker rather than a man on the brink of a nervous breakdown. We've got the first event coming up. And remember, if anything goes wrong, it's all part of the plan. What plan? Vin asked, clutching a device that looked like a blender had a love child with a landmine. Exactly, Jax replied with a grin that spoke volumes about his sanity, or lack thereof. Mara stood off to the side, her arms crossed like she was holding the universe's biggest IOU. The Zentari are going to be watching us like hawks. More like vultures, Tessa snorted, waiting for us to keel over. The first event, the Gauntlet of Graviton, was a test of agility and survival instinct. It wasn't named for its subtlety. Participants had to navigate a series of platforms while dodging gravitational anomalies that were as temperamental as a toddler with a sugar high. As the starting signal blared, an unholy mix of klaxon and screeching cat, the humans took off. Jax led the charge, leaping from platform to platform with a reckless abandon that made the Zentari audience murmur in what was either awe or impending schadenfreude. Vin's device, codenamed the Blendernaut, came into play. It was a piece of genuine Earth technology, something cobbled together from old household devices and a touch of madness. Its purpose? To emit a field that temporarily distorted gravity in their favor. As Jax activated it, a few Zentari observers squinted, their tentacles twitching in suspicion as the humans moved with an ease that defied their expectations. Is that cheating? One Zentari official muttered into their comm. Only if you get caught, Jax whispered to his team with a wink. One by one, the humans cleared the gauntlet, moving with a precision that suggested they'd done this before. Spoiler, they hadn't. This was either beginner's luck or cosmic oversight, but Jax wasn't one to question small miracles. Back in the observation bay, the Zentari were abuzz. Their empire, a bastion of order and dominance, couldn't quite comprehend how the humans were pulling it off. The word anomaly was being thrown around more than a beach ball at a summer concert. Jax and his team regrouped, a collective of grins and shrugs. "I can't believe that worked," Vin said, his voice a cocktail of disbelief and relief. "Let's not get too comfortable," Mara cautioned. "They'll be watching us closer than ever now." "Let them watch," Jax replied. "We'll give them a show they'll never forget." The next event was the Labyrinth of Lethality, which was as friendly as it sounded. Competitors had to navigate a maze filled with traps straight out of an overcaffeinated game designer's fever dream. Think less maze and more death trap with delusions of grandeur. As they entered, Jax felt the familiar tingle of adrenaline. "All right, remember the plan," he said, stopping short of saying there was no plan. "Stick together, and if you see anything shiny, it's probably trying to kill you." "Comforting," Tessa deadpanned. "Nothing like a little existential dread to start the day." The maze was a series of interconnected rooms, each more treacherous than the last. The Zentari, naturally, had the home field advantage, having designed the thing. But that was the beauty of human stupidity. It was remarkably inventive. They navigated past spiked traps and pitfalls, with Vin's gadgets working overtime. The Blendernaut continued to perform miracles, adjusting gravity here, short-circuiting electric barriers there. They moved like a well-oiled machine, if said machine was cobbled together with hopes, dreams, and a metric ton of duct tape. The Zentari observers grew restless. Humans weren't supposed to be this resourceful. They were supposed to flail around like a fish on dry land, not glide through their prized labyrinth like they owned it. In the control room, Zentari officials paced, their tentacles twitching with unease. "This isn't right," one said, its voice a sibilant whisper of scales on metal. "They're up to something." "Find out what," their supervisor barked. "We can't have humans making us look like fools. That's our job." Meanwhile, Jax and his team reached the center of the labyrinth, a feat that had the Zentari audience gasping in disbelief. There, amidst the flashing lights and holographic confetti, stood the exit. As they stepped through, there was a moment of stunned silence followed by a smattering of applause. It was hesitant, unsure if what they'd witnessed was a fluke or the beginning of something much more dangerous. "Told you we could do it," Vin grinned, looking like a kid who'd just pulled off the world's best prank. "Yeah, but now they know we can," Mara replied, ever the realist. "We're officially on their radar." "Good," Jax said, eyes glinting with defiance. "Let them sweat." The Zentari, for all their posturing, were rattled. Humans were supposed to be the comic relief, not the main act. Their empire, a monolith of power and precision, felt the first tremors of uncertainty creep in, like a particularly persistent riddle. As the next event loomed, the humans prepared. There was a palpable tension in the air, a mix of fear and excitement that thrummed through their veins. They were playing a game they had no right to be playing, and the stakes were higher than they'd ever imagined. Back in their quarters, Jax addressed the team. "We've got momentum, but we can't let up. The Zentari are like sharks. They smell blood and they'll come for us." "Then let's make sure they choke on it," Tessa said, the corner of her mouth twitching into a smirk. The next day dawned with the Zentari's flagship hovering overhead, a constant reminder of their watching eyes. The humans gathered, their eyes fixed on Jax, waiting for his words. "We're not just fighting for us," Jax said, his voice a low rumble. "We're fighting for every human who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or laughed at. We're here to show them that humanity is more than they bargained for." "So, no pressure then," Vin quipped, but there was a steel in his voice that hadn't been there before. The tournament continued, event after event. The humans, with their ragtag tech and reckless determination, left a trail of astonished onlookers in their wake. Each victory was a thorn in the Zentari's side, a reminder that the universe's underdogs were not to be trifled with. The Zentari's patience wore thin. Their empire, so accustomed to being the top of the heap, was being shaken by a species they dismissed as inconsequential. Whispers of discontent fluttered through the corridors of power like ghosts of shattered confidence. As the final event approached, tensions reached a fever pitch. The Zentari, desperate to regain control, tightened security, their officials glaring at the humans with a mix of suspicion and disdain. Jax and his team gathered one last time before the last event. There was an unspoken understanding among them, a bond forged in the fires of struggle and stupidity. "Whatever happens, we've made our mark," Jax said, his voice steady and sure. "More like a crater," Mara replied, a rare grin slipping through her usual mask of cynicism. The final event. The Zentari had pulled out all the stops, creating a challenge that was as much about endurance as it was about cunning. It was a race through a hostile landscape, a test of will and wit that would determine the victor. As they set off, Jax could feel the eyes of every Zentari upon them, their silent condemnation a weight on his shoulders. But he welcomed it, fed off it, let it drive him forward. The humans ran, their feet pounding against the alien ground, hearts hammering in their chests. They were a blur of movement and defiance, a testament to the human spirit's refusal to be extinguished. With every step they defied the odds, pushed back against a universe that had never made room for them. And as they crossed the finish line, they did so not as individuals, not as a ragtag team of misfits, but as something much more. They crossed as hope, as defiance, as humans. And the Zentari, for the first time, realized they'd underestimated Earth's most dangerous weapon, its people's ability to turn impossible into an afterthought. Jax stood there, breathing hard, a grin splitting his face. The Zentari hadn't seen it coming, hadn't dreamed it possible. But then again, when had humans ever done what they were supposed to? "Well," Jax muttered, surveying the scene, "now that we've got their attention, let's make sure we hold it." The tournament was over, but the real challenge had just begun. As they walked away, the humans knew that they'd done more than compete. They'd changed the game. And the Zentari Empire, for all its power, was suddenly faced with a truth it couldn't ignore. Humanity was here to stay. And the universe had better get used to it. The Zentari, an empire that had built its reputation on ironclad control and unyielding superiority, was encountering a peculiar problem. It wasn't the usual diplomatic incident or unruly colony. No, this was something altogether different: humans. A group of them, to be precise, and they were causing quite a stir in the decathlon of empires. Inside their flagship, a sleek monstrosity of metal and menace hovering ominously over Zircon 9, Zentari officials were getting increasingly twitchy. The humans were proving to be a thorn in their side, a particularly jagged, irritating thorn. The kind that doesn't just annoy you, it makes you question your life choices. "How are they doing this?" hissed one of the Zentari strategists, a writhing mass of frustration and tentacles. Its eyes flickered across the surveillance screens showing Jax Vorton and his team preparing for the next event. "I don't know," replied another, its voice dripping with a kind of exasperated disbelief. "But we need to figure it out before they make us look like a bunch of amateurs." The humans, blissfully unaware of the Zentari's rising panic, were busy in their cramped quarters. The room was filled with all manner of odd devices, half of which looked like they belonged more in a garage sale than in a space tournament. Jax leaned against the wall, arms crossed, attempting to look confident despite the chaos around him. "All right, team," Jax said, trying to project authority. "We need to up our game. The Zentari are tightening the screws, and they're going to be on us like galactic flies on a rotten Nebulan fruit." "Charming," Tessa remarked, tinkering with a gadget that looked suspiciously like a toaster with delusions of grandeur. Vince stood nearby, the blendernaut humming softly in his hands. "I've got some ideas for new combinations. If we blend the graviton disruptor with the phase inverter, we might just pull off something spectacular or blow ourselves to bits." "High stakes, bigger rewards," Jax said with a wry grin. "Besides, we're humans. If we're not on the brink of catastrophic failure, are we even trying?" Mara, ever the skeptic, raised an eyebrow. And what do we do if they catch on to our little tricks? Jax shrugged, a gesture of nonchalance that masked his growing anxiety. Improvise. It's what we do best. Meanwhile, the Zentari weren't the only ones watching. Other species, competitors and spectators alike, had begun taking note of the humans' unexpected success. Whispers of admiration mixed with envy spread through the alien ranks. The Zentari Empire's once unquestionable authority was being scrutinized, its edges fraying under the weight of human ingenuity and cheek. Back in their room, the humans were hard at work, if you could call it that. It was more a frantic scramble, like a bunch of underprepared school kids cramming for a test they forgot about until the last minute. Tessa was busy soldering wires with a focus that suggested she was either onto something brilliant or about to accidentally invent a new form of life. Vin, on the other hand, was deep in thought, his expression the epitome of eureka or oh no. It was hard to tell with him sometimes. "Got it," Vin said finally, holding up a contraption that looked like a blender mated with a 3D printer. "This baby will let us bend light around us. Will be harder to spot than a sane politician." "Great," Jax said, clapping Vin on the back. "Let's just hope it doesn't make us glow like a hyperactive disco ball." The next event in the decathlon was looming, a test of stealth and evasion through a field of sentient minds. It was the kind of challenge that sounded as if it was dreamt up by a sadist with a penchant for fireworks. As they stepped onto the course, the air crackled with tension. The Zentari monitors buzzed with anticipation, their officials doing their best to appear calm even as their nerves frayed. "Remember," Jax said, "fast and invisible. Let's show them we're not just apes with attitude." "Great pep talk," Mara snorted. "Really makes you want to run headlong into certain death." Jax flashed a grin, the kind of grin that said I'm terrified but let's pretend otherwise. "Hey, if you can't laugh in the face of danger, are you really living?" The humans activated Vin's newest contraption and it worked, mostly. They flickered in and out of view like a bad holovid with a skip in its playback. Not perfect, but good enough to mess with the Zentari sensors. They moved quickly, ducking and weaving through the field of mines, each step a gamble with their lives. The mines, sensing movement, jittered and trembled, but the humans' half-seen forms left them confused, like a dog chasing a laser pointer. "So far, so good," Tessa whispered, eyes darting around for signs of trouble. "Don't jinx it," Mara hissed back. "The universe loves proving us wrong." And it did. A particularly tenacious mine, apparently fueled by a vendetta against anything bipedal, locked onto Jax's fleeting form. A warning light blinked ominously. Guys," Jax said, trying to keep his voice level. "We've got company." Vin fiddled with the blender knot, adjusting dials and muttering a string of words that were either technical jargon or curses in a forgotten language. The device whirred, a low hum that vibrated through the air. "Just a second," Vin said, though it was clear even he wasn't sure how many seconds they had left. The mine closed in, a whirring ball of doom. The humans bolted, hearts thudding in their chests. It was a desperate scramble, like trying to outrun a bad decision. Then, in a burst of inspiration or madness, Vin tossed the blender knot at the mine. The device collided with it and there was a flash of light, a sound like a cosmic sneeze and a sudden, blessed silence. "Well, that was something," Tessa said, breathless but alive. "Don't think that's what the manual recommended," Mara added dryly. "What manual?" Vin shot back, a grin spreading across his face. The humans emerged from the minefield, battered but not broken. The Zentari officials, watching through their screens, looked like they'd just been told their credit cards were maxed out. It was a mixture of disbelief, outrage, and a growing sense that they might have bitten off more than they could chew. The cheers from the stands were louder now, a blend of respect and encouragement from other species who were secretly delighted to see the Zentari squirm. It was like watching the class nerd finally get one over the teacher's pet, and everyone loved a good underdog story. Back in their quarters, the team celebrated with a mix of relief and disbelief. The mood was buoyant, a rare moment of triumph in a universe that usually handed them nothing but lemons. To not dying horribly, Jax toasted, raising a cup of something that smelled like engine grease but tasted distinctly worse. "I'll drink to that," Tessa said, clinking her cup against his. Mara sipped hers cautiously. Not bad for something that could strip paint. Vin, ever the tinkerer, was already excitedly discussing his next invention, a combination of the Blendernaut and his light-bending device that he promised would do everything but make breakfast. As they chatted, the reality of their situation slowly settled in. They were making waves, shaking the foundation of an empire that had held 1,000 systems in thrall. It was an exhilarating thought, but also a terrifying one. The Zentari would not take this lying down. In the Zentari control room, tension boiled over into argument. The humans' continued success was not just an embarrassment, it was a challenge to their authority. The cracks in their veneer of invincibility were widening, and the other species were beginning to notice. "We need to stop them," one Zentari official growled, its tone as sharp as its scales, "before they undermine everything we've built." "How?" another retorted, its voice tinged with frustration. "They've proven more resourceful than we anticipated." "Then we adapt," the first said, the words heavy with resolve. "We turn their own tactics against them." Back in their quarters, oblivious to the plotting, Jax and his team were basking in their hard-earned glory. But beneath the surface, there was an awareness that this was only the beginning. The Zentari would come back stronger, more determined than ever to reassert their dominance. The humans would need to be ready. As the day wound down, Jax looked around at his team, his friends, his family in this chaotic corner of the galaxy. "No matter what happens next, we keep moving forward. We didn't come here to lose." "And if they come at us?" Mara asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Jax's grin was all teeth and bravado. "We'll do what we do best. Adapt, improvise, and give him hell." They laughed, the sound echoing through their cramped quarters. It was the kind of laughter that came not from certainty, but from the joy of defying expectations and the thrill of standing on the brink of the unknown. The Zentari Empire, for all its power and prestige, was facing a new reality. The humans were not just participants in their grand spectacle. They were contenders, disruptors, forces of chaos in a universe that thrived on order. The decathlon of empires was far from over, and the humans were far from finished. They would continue to push the limits, challenge the status quo, and remind the galaxy that the most dangerous weapon in any arena was not technology or strength, but the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be underestimated. As the lights of Zircon 9 dimmed and the stars pulled their silent vigil, the humans settled in for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers. But tonight they were victors, not just in the eyes of those who watched, but in the hearts of those who dared to dream beyond the constraints of gravity and expectation. And somewhere in the vastness of space, beneath the shadow of the Zentari flagship, hope flickered, resilient and irrepressible. Humanity had arrived, and it was here to stay. The Zentari, ever the gracious hosts, had tweaked the rules of the decathlon of empires overnight. What was a simple matter of avoiding gravitational anomalies had morphed into a gauntlet featuring surprise laser turrets and random force fields. It was as if a child had thrown every toy in the box into a game and yelled, "Try not to die." Jack stood at the staging area, squinting at the Zentari announcement hologram. "You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say they're trying to kill us." "That's the spirit," Tessa said, tinkering with a graviton disruptor that looked ready to explode, or maybe that was the design. "Embrace that paranoia. It's what keeps us alive." Vin was off to the side, still nursing a black eye from their last adventure. "They've got new surprises every day. If they put as much effort into their social skills as they do into murder, they'd be great at diplomacy." Mara leaned back against a nearby crate, rolling her eyes. "Diplomacy's overrated. It's like having a polite argument with a serial killer." Speaking of serial killers, Jack said, nodding towards the field where the event would take place. Any bright ideas on how we survive this one? Vin tapped the latest iteration of the Blendernaut, now sporting a few extra buttons that screamed "Press me if you dare." "I've got a thing. A very science-y thing. Might help us dodge those turrets. Might also reactivate that mine we glued together yesterday, but who's counting?" "How comforting," Mara said dryly. "Our survival hinges on a device that doesn't even have a manual." Jack sighed, a sound full of resignation and just a tad of hope. "All right, let's make our way through this death trap. Remember, the trick to not getting shot is simply not being there. Or being somewhere else entirely," Vin added helpfully. The event kicked off with the traditional Zentari fanfare, something between a dying cat and a bagpipe with ambitions of world domination. The humans stood at the starting line, their expressions a collective mask of "what the hell are we doing here?" The crowd was a mix of murmurs and skeptical glances, like they were all waiting for the punchline in a joke that could very well end in catastrophe. As the signal blared, the humans sprinted forward, dodging the first surprise obstacle, a volley of laser beams that seemed less like a test of agility and more like target practice. "Keep moving," Jack shouted, his voice barely audible over the hum of the lasers. Tessa's graviton disruptor was doing its job, barely. The force fields flickered as they passed, creating gaps just long enough for the team to slip through. It was like playing dodgeball with a schizophrenic AI. "Is this thing even working?" Tessa yelled, her tone equal parts frustration and disbelief. "Trust me," Vin called back. "I've recalibrated it with some interesting technology. Just don't ask where I got it." "Recalibrated my ass," Mara muttered. "More like duct-taped and prayed over." They ducked and weaved, the landscape shifting beneath their feet, a kaleidoscope of chaos. More turrets sprang up, but Vin's contraption managed to throw them off, spitting out decoy images that drew fire. It was the digital equivalent of dangling a shiny object in front of a cat, and just as unpredictable. Somewhere amidst the chaos, a stray shot clipped Jax's arm, sending him skidding to the ground. The rest of the team halted, their hearts stopping for a fraction of a second. "Keep going," Jax waved them on, grimacing through the pain. "I'll just catch my breath." Mara hauled him up with a grunt. "No heroics, just stupid enough to make it through." Vin whirled around, adjusting the Blendernaut with a flourish. "I think I've got something for that arm." "You mean besides encouraging words and a pat on the back?" Jax winced as Vin slapped a quick med patch over the wound. The effect was immediate, pain relief with a side of mild hallucinations, if Vin's track record was anything to go by. The Zentari were watching, eyes narrowing as the humans maneuvered through their trap-laden course with an agility that bordered on the insane. The humans, like the unwelcome surprise at a well-orchestrated party, were refusing to adhere to expectations. "They don't know when to quit," a Zentari official growled, watching the screens with a mix of ire and reluctant admiration. "They're resourceful," another admitted, though the word tasted like ash. "But we can still outmaneuver them." "Enough with the games," a third barked. "We need to show them why we're in control." Meanwhile, Jax and his team finally reached the end of the course, breathless and disheveled, but very much alive. The crowd was a sea of mixed reactions, some impressed, others disappointed, the rest looking like they'd stumbled into a different arena entirely. Back in the staging area, the mood was jubilant, if not slightly manic. Jax leaned against a table, his face flushed with color and adrenaline. "Well, that was fun. Anyone up for a second round?" "Only if you're buying the drinks," Tessa said, wiping sweat from her brow. Vin was already fiddling with the Blendernaut, muttering about potential upgrades and the possibility of adding a coffee maker. "Next time, remind me to bring something that doesn't involve so much running," Mara chuckled, a rare smile breaking through her usual cynicism. "You mean like a gun? Or a tank?" Jax added, grinning despite himself. The Zentari, however, were in no mood for humor. In their war room, the atmosphere was tense enough to cut with a knife. They had underestimated the humans, a mistake they were unlikely to repeat. "We need a new strategy," the Zentari commander declared, pacing with the intensity of someone who had just realized their empire might not be as invincible as they thought. "Something that turns their strengths against them. And how do you propose we do that?" an aide asked, voice laced with skepticism. "Simple," the commander said, a cold smile curling over its features. "We let them think they are winning." Back on the human side, the team was unwinding, their tense muscles relaxing as the adrenaline rush faded. Jax, despite the throbbing in his arm, felt a sense of satisfaction. They'd done the impossible again and lived to tell the tale. "Here's to not dying," Mara toasted, raising a can of dubious origin. Yet, Jax joined in, clinking his own can against hers. "I'll drink to that." Vin was already deep in planning mode, scribbling ideas for the next event. "If we survive the next round, I'm thinking we open a consultancy. How to not die horribly in alien death games might be a niche market." Tessa laughed, a sound close to genuine amusement. "I'm in, as long as I get to keep the gadgets." "Deal," Jax said, grinning wide. "What's life without a little danger, right?" The Zentari, however, were not done. As the humans huddled in their makeshift quarters, plotting their next move, a message arrived. It was an invitation to a banquet, ostensibly in their honor. Jax read the invitation, skepticism etched into every feature. "You know, if I didn't know better, I'd say this smells like a trap." "Smells like diplomacy," Mara said, though her tone was far from convinced. "Or poison," Vin added, ever the ray of optimism. Tessa shrugged. "Well, if they wanted us dead, they'd have done it by now. Or they're just waiting for us to lower our guard," Jax countered. "Either way, we need to play nice." For now, the banquet was a spectacle of excess, all polished surfaces and gleaming alien delicacies. The Zentari knew how to throw a party if your idea of fun was mingling with individuals who'd preferred to see you dead yesterday. Jax led the team in, their posture relaxed but minds alert, eyes scanning for any hint of treachery. The Zentari officials met them with strained smiles and handshakes, expressions like masks that didn't quite fit. "Welcome, esteemed competitors," the Zentari leader intoned, voice smooth as oil on a slipway. "We are honored to celebrate your successes." "Honored, huh?" Vin whispered to Tessa. "Sounds more like irritated." "Close enough," Tessa replied, watching the Zentari warily. "Let's not give them any more reasons to dislike us." The humans mingled with the crowd, smiles plastered on like armor. They were surrounded by a sea of unfamiliar faces, each alien gaze evaluating, calculating, deciding if these scrappy humans were worth the trouble. Jax found himself in conversation with a Zentari diplomat, their exchange a dance of words that meant little and implied much. "Your team has shown remarkable skill," the diplomat said, though the compliment was sharp enough to cut. "We've not seen such adaptability before." "Yeah, we're full of surprises," Jax replied, his own words a double-edged sword. "Just wait till you see us at a karaoke night." The diplomat blinked, clearly unprepared for that particular cultural reference. Indeed. Mara, meanwhile, was busy collecting morsels of information alongside the appetizers. She moved through the crowd like a shadow, ears open for anything that might give them an edge. At another table, Vin and Tessa were engaged in a rapid-fire exchange, their banter a smokescreen for their quiet observations. As the night wore on, the tension in the room was a palpable thing, a current that crackled between the rivals. The humans were on their best behavior, but underneath the pleasantries they were on high alert, ready for anything. "You think this is a trap?" Tessa asked as they regrouped at the end of the hall. "Probably," Vin said, swirling his drink absently. "But they don't know we expect it." "That's the spirit," Jax said, his smile a sharp, dangerous thing. "Let's enjoy the show." As they returned to their quarters, the humans were buoyed by a sense of impending chaos. The Zentari had underestimated them at every turn, and now their games had become a battlefield. Tomorrow's another day, Jax said, the words filled with the kind of defiant hope that only the chronically outnumbered could muster. Mara chuckled, the sound low and full of dark amusement. And another chance for us to do what we do best. Jax nodded, his gaze distant but determined. Adapt, improvise, and give him hell. The Zentari flagship loomed over Zircon 9 like a grumpy god deciding whether to smite or ignore the ants beneath. Inside the human quarters, the atmosphere was thick enough to chew. Jax sat hunched over a table littered with gear and the remnants of what had passed for breakfast. His arm throbbed with a dull insistence, a reminder that he was still quite capable of getting hurt. The banquet had been a masquerade, a distraction from the real war being waged in shadows and whispers. Whoever said winning was the best revenge clearly never tried it against an empire allergic to losing, Vin said, massaging the black eye that had become a permanent fixture on his face. Can we just skip to the part where we get the hell out of here? Mara asked, her voice a blend of irritation and fatigue. This dance is giving me blisters. Not until we finish the decathlon, Jax replied, though the words tasted sour. We came this far. Might as well see it through. Right, because that's going so well, Tessa said, her graviton disruptor cradled like a particularly volatile child. We're only a few sabotages away from a vacation to the afterlife. As if on cue, the door slid open with a whoosh, and an aide from the Zentari walked in, his expression about as welcoming as a fart in a spacesuit. A pleasure as always, Jax said, not bothering to hide the sarcasm. The pleasure is all yours, I assure you, replied the aide, his face a rigid mask of Zentari superiority. The next event is about to commence. We expect your team to be ready. Expectations are like RC holes, Mara muttered. Everyone's got them and they all stink. Jax sighed, standing up with the weariness of someone who'd fought gravity and lost. Let's go, team. Let's not keep our gracious hosts waiting. The next event, the Gauntlet of Graviton, was ostensibly designed to test agility and survival instinct. In reality, it was a glorified death trap concocted by someone with a sadistic streak and a flair for theatrical drama. The entire setup was a swirling mess of gravitational anomalies, surprise laser turrets, and enough force fields to make a paranoid conspiracy theorist weep with validation. The humans stood at the starting line, their gear strapped on with the determined air of gladiators marching into an arena. Their breaths were visible in the chilly air, each exhale a fleeting sign of life amidst the engineered chaos. Remember the plan, Jax said, his voice steady despite the turmoil. Keep moving, watch each other's backs, and don't do anything stupid. Define stupid, Vin said, his blendernaut buzzing softly at his hip. Stupid is dying before you've had a chance to flip the bird at the Zentari, Mara replied, her smile a slash of defiance. The klaxon blared, signaling the start. The team took off, legs pumping, hearts racing, minds sharp as they navigated the gravitational minefield. The Zentari watched from their observation deck, expressions a mix of anticipation and contempt. Think they want us dead or just humiliated? Tessa asked, ducking under a laser that sizzled past her ear. Why not both? Vin said, his voice strained but still managing a hint of humor. They're nothing if not efficient. Jax was ahead, leading the charge, when another turret popped up like a metal gopher, spitting death. He rolled, narrowly avoiding a blast that could have turned him into a human kebab. Nice move, Tessa shouted, her voice carrying over the din. Thanks, Jax panted, but I'd prefer a nice nap. They pushed on, each step a gamble, each breath a victory. The Zentari had crafted an intricate web of traps, yet the humans slipped through with a mix of ingenuity and sheer bloody-mindedness. Then it happened. As Jax took the lead across a narrow bridge of shimmering force, the bridge flickered, then vanished. He fell, a short scream escaping as he plummeted into the void below. Jax, Mara shouted, lunging forward, but it was too late. He was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The rest of the team skidded to a halt, horror freezing their limbs. For a moment, the world stood still, suspended between disbelief and shock. Get moving. Tessa yelled, her voice a whip that snapped them back to reality. We can't stop now. The Zentari watched with thinly veiled satisfaction, their trap sprung, their enemies ensnared in despair. Jax's fall was a coup de grace, a reminder of the Empire's unyielding control. But the humans weren't finished. They regrouped, their movements mechanical, driven by the need to keep pushing forward despite the gaping hole where their leader used to be. I can't believe he's gone, Vin said, his voice raw, his gaze distant. He's not gone, Mara corrected, her tone steely. He's just temporarily misplaced in a bottomless pit, Tessa muttered. Next time, let's misplace them instead. They reached the end of the course, battered but not entirely broken. The Zentari were waiting, their smiles thin as razors. Congratulations on completing the trial, intoned a Zentari official, the words dipped in mockery. Your perseverance is admirable perseverance. Mara echoed, spitting out the word like it was poison. You mean surviving your little murder attempt? The official's expression didn't flicker. All part of the challenge. Adaptability is key, yeah. Well, adapt to this, Vince said, flipping the bird with a flourish that would have made Jax proud. In the aftermath, back in their cramped quarters, the humans were silent, the room heavy with Jax's absence. They sat together, a huddle of bruises and bitterness, their unity a fraying rope. What the hell do we do now? Vin asked, breaking the silence, his voice carrying a hint of desperation. We do what we have to, Mara answered, her eyes hard and unyielding. We survive, and then… Tessa pushed, her gaze searching for hope amid the wreckage. We win, Mara said simply, as though it was the most obvious thing in the universe. The team fell into uneasy silence, the weight of their situation pressing down like a vice. Outside, the Zentari were celebrating their victory, convinced that the humans had finally been brought to heel. But the humans weren't beaten, not yet. Beneath their despair, anger simmered, a fire waiting to ignite. They had lost Jax, but they hadn't lost their defiance, their will to fight back. As night fell over Zircon 9, the humans quietly plodded, their minds working in sync, each thought a step toward turning the tide. The Zentari believed they'd crushed the human spirit, but they hadn't counted on one simple truth. Humans are stubborn bastards. In the darkness, a plan began to form, a dangerous, reckless plan that might just tip the scales. It was the kind of plan Jax would have loved, full of audacity and a healthy disregard for the odds. We're going to need a miracle, Vin said, voicing what they all felt. No, Mara corrected, her smile a ghost in the dim light. We're going to make our own. Outside, the Zentari continued their celebrations, blissfully unaware that the humans were not as defeated as they seemed. Inside, the human team was a coiled spring, ready to unleash chaos in the most unexpected ways. Tomorrow we make our move, Tessa said, her tone as firm as the steel trap she was setting. Let's turn their celebration into a disaster. Are we really going to do this? Vin asked, skepticism and excitement mingling. Do we have a choice? Mara replied, her eyes gleaming with a light that spoke of vengeance and resolve. The humans fell into a restless sleep, dreams filled with shadows and the promise of payback. They might have been pushed to their lowest point, but the only way left was up. And when they rose, it would be with fire in their hearts and determination in every step. The night stretched on, the Zentari oblivious to the storm brewing beneath their noses. The humans lay amidst their gear, their minds a tangle of schemes and calculations. What do you think Jax would say? Vin asked into the silence, his voice a whisper in the dark. Mara chuckled softly. He'd probably tell us we're all idiots. Then he'd lead the charge. Sounds about right, Tessa agreed, feeling a pang of loss that only spurred her resolve further. They slept, and with each hour that passed, the tension in the air thickened, setting the stage for the next act. The Zentari thought they had the upper hand, but the humans were ready to show them just how wrong they were. The morning came, a harsh reminder that time was slipping away. The team gathered, their expressions grim but resolute, each one of them aware of the risks yet undeterred. Let's give them a show they won't forget, Mara said, her voice carrying the weight of a promise. Ready or not, the Zentari were about to learn what humans were truly capable of when pushed to the edge. It was a lesson long overdue, delivered with a side of irony and a dash of irreverence. As the humans prepared to face the next day, they did so with the knowledge that while empires may rise and fall, the human spirit, rebellious, indomitable, defiant, could never be truly conquered. The morning sun, or whatever passed for a sun on Zircon 9, crept over the horizon like an unwelcome guest, casting long shadows over the Zentari flagship looming overhead. In the humans' quarters, Tessa, Vin, and Mara sat in a huddled circle, plotting as if their lives depended on it, probably because they did. "All right, let's review," Mara said, her voice a mix of determination and exhaustion. "Vin, you got that blendernaut of yours ready to pull a miracle," Vin smirked, tapping the device at his hip. "This baby's as ready as it'll ever be. Just hope it works better than a Zentraxian hangover remedy." Tessa shot him a skeptical glance. "We are really betting our lives on a gadget named after a kitchen appliance." "Hey, don't knock it," Vin retorted. "It's not just any kitchen appliance. It's the kind with extra settings for chaos." "Apt," Mara muttered, cracking a smile. "All right then, Tessa, you and that graviton disruptor of yours are going to be key. We need you to scramble their sensors long enough for us to slip through their security." "Piece of cake," Tessa said, though her grip on the disruptor was tight enough to turn her knuckles white. "Assuming we don't all get vaporized first." Details, Vin said, waving off the concern. "Look, the Zentari are cocky bastards, right? They think they've got us under their boot, and they're too busy patting themselves on the back to see what's coming." "And what exactly is coming?" Tessa asked, arching an eyebrow. Mara's grin was a thing of fierce beauty. "Payback. In the form of a very public, very embarrassing screw-up on their part. They spent the next hour finalizing their plans, each detail a small act of rebellion against the Zentari's oppressive regime." By the end of it, Mara felt a strange sense of calm settle over her. With Jax gone, it was up to them to carry on his legacy of defiance. And if that meant flipping the bird to an entire empire, so be it. "Time to get this show on the road," Mara said, standing. "Let's make sure the Zentari remember today for all the wrong reasons." The team moved through the corridors of their makeshift habitat, their steps echoing with the thud of boots and the quiet symphony of seditious plans. The tension was palpable, a thick fog of apprehension and anticipation. The Zentari were going to regret underestimating them, or so they hoped. Reaching the staging area, they joined the throng of competitors, each one eyeing the humans with a mix of disdain and morbid curiosity. The Zentari official was there, looking as smug as ever, a walking testament to the phrase punchable face. "Welcome back," the official intoned, his voice dripping with disdain. "I trust your team is prepared for today's challenge, as prepared as anyone can be for a game of Don't Die," Mara replied, her smile sharp enough to cut. The official ignored the jab, gesturing toward the maze of obstacles that lay ahead. "Today's event will test your resilience and adaptability. We trust you will find it stimulating." Vin leaned over to Mara. "Stimulating like a high-voltage cattle prod, maybe." "Don't worry," Mara whispered back. "We've got something stimulating in store for them, too." The klaxon blared, signaling the start of the trial. The humans surged forward, hearts pounding like war drums, each step a defiant footnote in their ongoing struggle. The obstacles loomed ahead, a gauntlet of madness designed to break spirits and bones alike. It was time to put their plan into action. "Now, Tessa," Mara shouted, and Tessa didn't hesitate. With a flick of her wrist, the graviton disruptor hummed to life, sending a pulse of energy rippling through the air. The Zentari's sensors flickered, struggling to comprehend the sudden anomaly. "I hope this works," Vin muttered, activating the blendernaut. The device whirred with a chaotic energy, its purpose clear: to scramble the Zentari systems long enough for them to make their move. "Here goes nothing," Mara said, her eyes locked on the path ahead. The team moved as one, a blur of motion and determination, weaving through obstacles with a precision born of desperation. The Zentari were caught off guard, their carefully constructed web of control unraveling before their eyes. Alarms blared, a cacophony of malfunction and panic, as the humans exploited every weakness they could find. "We're doing it," Tessa exclaimed, her voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. "Of course we are," Vin replied, dodging a laser beam that fizzled uselessly past. "We're humans. We excel at doing the impossible." Mara resisted the urge to laugh outright, the absurdity of their situation not lost on her. They were playing a deadly game of cat and mouse, and for once they were the ones with the upper hand. The confusion amongst the Zentari was palpable, their usual air of superiority crumbling under the weight of unexpected failure. The humans had turned the tables, and it was a beautiful sight to behold. "Keep moving," Mara urged, leading the charge as they navigated the labyrinthine course. Every step took them closer to the heart of the Zentari's operation, where they intended to hit hardest. The Empire's desperation was evident, their ranks thrown into disarray by the sudden turn of events. What was meant to be a display of power had become a spectacle of embarrassment, broadcasted for all to see. "Think they've figured it out yet?" Tessa asked, breathless but exhilarated. "Probably," Vin said, glancing back at the chaos they'd left in their wake. "But it's too late for them to do anything about it." They reached the control hub, the beating heart of the Zentari's operations, and Mara wasted no time. With a grim smile, she set about wreaking havoc on their systems, each keystroke a dagger in the Empire's side. "This is for Jax," she muttered, her fingers flying over the console. The Zentari's confusion turned to outright panic as their own systems began to turn against them, sabotaged by the very people they'd sought to dominate. It was a poetic justice, one that Mara relished with every fiber of her being. "We've done it," Tessa said, all mingling with delight. "We actually did it. Did you ever doubt?" Mara replied, though her heart pounded with the adrenaline of victory. They'd struck a blow against the Zentari, one that would reverberate through the corridors of power. The humans regrouped, their faces alight with a triumph that had seemed impossible mere hours before. They'd taken what was meant to be their defeat and turned it into an undeniable victory. "What now?" Vin asked, his gaze steady and determined. "Now," Mara said, her voice a clarion call of defiance, "we keep going. We show them they can't break us. That we're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting to win." As they made their way back to their quarters, the reality of their achievement settled in. The Zentari had been dealt a blow they wouldn't soon forget, their empire's veneer of invincibility cracked. The humans were no longer the underdogs, cowering in the shadow of a monolithic power. They were contenders, armed with cunning and an unyielding will to fight. And as they prepared for whatever came next, one thing was clear. The Zentari had made a grave mistake in underestimating them. In the stillness of their quarters, the team celebrated in small ways. A shared grin, a relieved sigh, a toast to their fallen leader. They'd done the impossible and lived to tell the tale. "This one's for Jax," Vin said, raising his flask. "Wherever he is, I hope he's laughing his ass off." "Here's to that," Mara agreed, clinking her mug against his. "And here's to the Zentari learning that humans are a lot harder to kill than they thought." Tessa laughed, the sound a balm to their weary souls. "I'll drink to that." As the shadows lengthened outside, the humans settled into a wary peace, their victory a beacon of hope in the dark expanse of space. They'd proven themselves capable of outsmarting an empire, and they weren't about to stop now. With their spirits renewed, they faced the future with a newfound confidence, ready to take on whatever challenges awaited. The Zentari might have thought they'd crushed the human spirit, but they couldn't have been more wrong. As the night enveloped Zircon 9, the humans plotted their next move, each mind a forge of rebellion and ingenuity. They were far from finished with the Zentari, and the universe would soon know it. "Let's give them hell," Mara said, her voice a promise of things to come. And with that, the humans prepared to continue their fight, each step a testament to their enduring defiance, each plan a strike against the Empire's tyranny. The Zentari had started this war, but the humans intended to finish it. With a satisfied sigh, Mara leaned back, her heart a steady drumbeat of resolve. They had lost Jax, but his spirit lived on in their actions, guiding them through the darkness and into the light of a new day. The Zentari would learn that humans were not to be underestimated, that sometimes the smallest spark could ignite the greatest fire. And as the humans prepared for the battles ahead, they did so with the knowledge that victory was within their grasp. They'd come this far against all odds, and they weren't about to let the Zentari take that away. As long as they had breath in their bodies and fire in their hearts, they'd keep fighting, keep defying, keep winning. After all, humans were nothing if not tenacious, and the Zentari were about to learn that the hard way. The Zentari official stood at the edge of the staging area, looking like someone who'd just swallowed a very large bug. His eyes flicked to the human team, disbelief and disdain warring for dominance on his face. "Congratulations," he drawled, though his tone suggested he'd rather be congratulating a particularly unpleasant rash. "You've made it to the final event. I hope you continue to find the experience enlightening." Mara met his gaze with a grin that could slice through titanium. "Oh, we will. Enlightenment is what we're all about." Behind her, Vin covered a snicker with a cough, and Tessa adjusted her graviton disruptor with the air of someone casually checking a wristwatch. As the humans moved past the Zentari official, Vin couldn't resist a parting shot. "Let's just hope your turrets are as enlightening as your personality." "Wouldn't want them to disappoint." The Zentari aide remained stoic, though the twitch in his left eye suggested Vin's barb had hit home. The humans continued into the arena, their confidence buoyed by adrenaline and a sense of impending chaos. The final event awaited, and with it, the chance to shove a metaphorical boot up the Zentari's collective backside. The arena was a vast expanse of shifting platforms, each one glowing with iridescent energy. Above them, the Zentari flagship hung in the sky like an ominous cloud, ready to rain down judgment, or so the Zentari hoped. "Welcome to the Gauntlet of Graviton," the Zentari announcer's voice echoed through the arena, dripping with manufactured enthusiasm. "A test of your agility, resilience, and will to survive." "Sounds like a Monday morning," Vin muttered, earning a grin from Mara. The klaxon blared and the platforms began to move, some rising, some falling, others spinning like a carousel from hell. Laser turrets snapped to life, stitching the air with deadly beams, while force fields flickered unpredictably, adding a delightful touch of chaos. "All right, team," Mara shouted over the cacophony, "it's showtime." Tessa activated the graviton disruptor, its hum a comforting presence amidst the madness. "Let's dance," she quipped, dodging a laser with a grace that would have made a cat envious. Vin was next, the blendernaut in his hands whirring with chaotic glee. "Hold onto your butts," he advised before unleashing the device. The arena shimmered, the turrets hesitated, and the force fields blinked in and out of existence like a faulty neon sign. "Nice work, Vin," Mara called out, weaving between platforms like a needle through fabric. "Now let's see if we can take this party to the next level." The humans moved as one, their every step a calculated defiance of gravity's fickle grasp. The Zentari systems, once a paragon of precision, now floundered in disarray, caught off guard by the humans' unorthodox tactics. "We're giving them a run for their money," Tessa observed, sidestepping a force field that rippled angrily at her proximity. "More like a marathon," Vin replied, deftly avoiding a turret's blast that would have been fatal if not for the blendernaut's interference. "And I didn't even bring my running shoes." As they reached the center of the arena, Mara knew it was time to implement the final phase of their plan. "This is it," she said, her voice a steadying anchor amidst the chaos. "Tessa, you're up." With a nod, Tessa knelt, her hands flying over the graviton disruptor's controls. The device pulsed, its energy spreading through the arena like ripples on a pond. The effect was instantaneous. Platforms lurched unpredictably, turrets fired wildly, and the Zentari flagship systems began to stutter. "What's happening?" Vin shouted, though the grin on his face suggested he already knew the answer. "Their systems are collapsing," Tessa replied, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "We're rewriting the rules of their little game." The Zentari's controlled chaos was unraveling before their eyes, their ironclad grip on the competition slipping with every passing second. The humans pressed forward, relentless in their pursuit of victory, each step a testament to their ingenuity and tenacity. "We're doing it," Mara breathed, her heart pounding with exhilaration. "We're actually doing it." The Zentari announcer's voice crackled with static, the veneer of control slipping as he tried to maintain a semblance of authority. "Competitors, please, remain calm." "Calm?" Vin laughed, narrowly dodging a platform that decided it wanted to be elsewhere. "We're humans. Calm is for Sundays and tea parties." Mara reached the control node at the center of the arena, the pulsating heart of the Zentari systems. With a determined smile, she set to work, fingers dancing over the console with the precision of a concert pianist. "This one's for the folks back home," she muttered, her voice a quiet promise amidst the chaos. "Let's show them what humans are made of." The Zentari systems buckled, their intricate web of control unraveling under Mara's assault. Alarms blared, a symphony of failure echoing through the arena as the humans seized the upper hand. "We've got them," Tessa said, awe and disbelief mingling in her voice. "We've actually got them." The Zentari flagship, once a symbol of unassailable power, hung powerless in the sky above, its systems savaged by the humans' ingenuity. Across the Zentari-controlled worlds, the broadcast of their defeat spread like wildfire, igniting the spark of rebellion. "Think they'll remember this day?" Vin asked, his voice light with triumph. "Oh, they'll remember," Mara replied, a fierce satisfaction in her tone. "And they'll never underestimate humans again." The arena fell silent, the Zentari's defeat a tangible presence in the air. The humans stood triumphant, their victory a beacon of hope in the vast darkness of space. As the reality of their achievement settled in, the humans knew that they'd done more than just win a competition. They'd set in motion a chain of events that would ripple across the galaxy. The Zentari Empire, once a monolithic force of oppression, now faced an uncertain future. Back in their quarters, the team celebrated with a quiet camaraderie born of hard-won triumph. They'd faced the might of the Zentari and come out on top, their spirits unbroken, their resolve unyielding. "What now?" Tessa asked, her gaze steady and sure. "Now," Mara said, raising a battered mug in a toast, "we keep fighting. We take this victory and build on it. We show the Zentari and the galaxy that humans are a force to be reckoned with." The team clinked their mugs together, the sound a promise of things to come. They'd faced the darkness and emerged victorious, their resolve as unbreakable as the stars above. "This one's for Jax," Vin said, his voice a quiet tribute to their fallen leader. "Wherever he is, I hope he's smiling." Mara nodded, a wry smile on her lips. "And here's to the Zentari learning what happens when you underestimate humans." As they prepared for the challenges ahead, the team knew that their fight was far from over. The Zentari had started this war, but the humans intended to finish it. And with their spirits renewed, they faced the future with a fierce determination, ready to take on whatever came their way. The Zentari might have thought they'd crushed the human spirit, but they couldn't have been more wrong. With every breath in their bodies, the humans would continue to fight, defy, and win. They were tenacious, irreverent, and clever, and the Zentari were about to learn that the hard way. The Zentari Empire was a lot like a stubborn weed, deep roots, an ugly flower, and always cropping up where it wasn't wanted. Yet here was this ragtag group of humans, having pulled the thing out by the roots and left it wilting on the surface of Zircon 9. If you squinted just right, you might call it poetic. Jax Vorton, the man who had somehow ended up leading this circus, stood at the edge of the former Zentari staging area. Now, It resembled a junkyard more than a symbol of imperial might. He winced as he shifted, his injuries still a reminder that he was human after all. Not that he needed reminding. The victory was mostly thanks to the ingenuity and sheer bloody-mindedness of his team, not some magical resilience or their charming personalities. Think they've got any decent ale stashed away? Vin asked, coming up beside him. He gestured at the Zentari wreckage like a man eyeing up a buffet. You'd think an empire that big could spring for a decent brew, Jack snorted. I wouldn't trust Zentari ale. It's probably brewed with spite and fermented disappointment. Tessa wandered over, graviton disruptor slung casually over her shoulder like it was a fashion accessory. Heard they're already trying to set up a new government. Bet it'll be about as organized as a cat parade. A cat parade might be more entertaining, Vin mused. Less chance of being shot at, too. Mara joined them, her grin as sharp as broken glass. You'd think they'd have learned not to underestimate us by now. But some lessons come harder than others. The humans had become something of a symbol. Not the kind you put on a coin, more the kind you slap on a graffiti wall. They represented raw resourcefulness, a middle finger to the Zentari's well-oiled machine. Each territory that had once been under the Zentari heel now looked to the humans as an example of what could be done with a little cleverness and a lot of stubbornness. Got a message from one of the newly independent territories, Tessa said, glancing at her communicator. They want to know how we did it. I told them. You need a blender, a graviton disruptor, and a healthy disregard for authority. Throw in a dash of insanity for good measure, Vin added. Can't forget that. Jax chuckled, then winced again. It was like laughing with a cracked rib, because he was pretty sure that's exactly what he had. But if the Zentari had been gods, they were now the fallen kind, toppled from their self-constructed pedestals by a bunch of humans who had no interest in playing nice. The arena, now a ruin of technology and dashed Zentari pride, stood silent, bearing witness to the tectonic shift in power. The Zentari flagship, once a looming threat, was grounded, its system so scrambled they'd be lucky to manage a decent light show now, let alone galactic domination. Feels like the end of an era, Jack said, surveying the carnage. Or at least the end of their era. About time, too, Vin replied. I'm tired of dodging laser turrets before breakfast. Wouldn't have pegged you for a morning person, Tessa said. More of a surviving person, Vin pointed out. And if that means dodging turrets, well, I suppose it's cardio. Mara slapped Jax on the back, hard enough to rattle his bones. Cheer up, Jax. We just toppled an empire. That's not something you get to do every day. Not unless you're a very ambitious gardener, Jax said, rubbing his shoulder. But yeah, you're right. We did good. The news of their triumph had already started to ripple through the galaxy. Some planets celebrated, others took cautious steps towards independence, and a few were busy arguing over who got to rule what. All of them, however, shared one thing in common. They'd all seen what could be achieved when you stopped following the script. Think they'll make a movie about us? Vin wondered aloud. They'd have to cut your part, Tessa shot back. Too much talking. Hey, I'm the comic relief, Vin protested. Every good story needs one. Maybe they'll put us in history books, Mara said, smirking. Under how not to conduct an empire, Jax rubbed his temples, the chaos of success a strange bedfellow to the clarity of battle. They'll find some way to screw it up, you know. Politics will get in the way. Someone will start arguing over who gets the biggest slice of the pie, probably, Tessa agreed. But we'll just have to hope they're smarter than the Zentari. That's not exactly a high bar, Vin remarked dryly. The new leaders, if you could call them that, were already squabbling like children over a toy box. But they were free to squabble, and that was something. A new, albeit uncertain, world was forming in the aftermath of their rebellion, and humanity was at its heart. They were the underdogs who had bitten back, the unlikely heroes of a story no one saw coming. Let's just hope they don't screw it up too badly, Mara said. We've done our part. Now it's their turn. Jax nodded. Right. We've given them the chance. It's up to them to make something of it. The team stood together, surveying the result of their defiance. The Zentari had been brought low, and though the future was uncertain, it was a future forged by their own hands. A victory in more ways than one. "Here's to chaos," Vin said, a grin splitting his face. "Without it, we'd never have won, or survived," Tessa added. "Or lived to tell the tale," Mara finished, raising a hand in mock toast. Jax took a deep breath, wincing only slightly. "Here's to the next adventure. Whatever it is, however insane it might be." And with that, they left the arena, a monument to their success and the Zentari's failure. The galaxy lay before them, as unpredictable as ever, but for the first time in a long time, it seemed less daunting. Back on the ship they'd commandeered, no longer a Zentari flagship but a humble human vessel, they gathered in the mess hall. It wasn't much, but it was home for now. The air was thick with the scent of recycled food and the tingling promise of the unknown. "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing?" Vin mused, stirring a cup of something that might generously be called coffee. "All the time," Jax replied, nursing what was definitely not coffee. "It's what keeps me grounded." "Grounded, huh?" Mara smirked. "You sure it's not just your injuries?" "Could be both," Jax conceded. Tessa set down her mug with a clatter. "We might have been the underdogs, but we're not anymore. We've got everyone's attention now. Let's just make sure we keep it," Jax said. "No more going quiet. We stay loud, we stay annoying, and we keep surviving." "Sounds like a plan," Vin agreed. "Annoying's what we do best." As they laughed and joked, their camaraderie a balm against the uncertainty of tomorrow, the galaxy outside continued to change. The Zentari had been dethroned, and the universe, ever fickle, was already turning to the next chapter. "Think we'll get medals?" Vin asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Only if you promise to shut up about it," Tessa replied. "No one needs to see you strutting around with shiny things." "Speak for yourself," Vin shot back. "I'd make medals look good." "Keep dreaming," Mara said, leaning back with a sigh. "But who knows? Maybe they'll name a planet after us. The planet of misfit humans," Jax chuckled. "Has a nice ring to it." They all laughed, the sound echoing through the ship, a testament to their unity and spirit. The battles might be over for now, but the war against complacency, against oppression, and against forgetting what they'd achieved was ongoing. "Here's to the future," Jax said, raising his mug in a final toast. To the future, his team echoed, their voices a promise to each other and to the universe they'd helped shape. As they settled back into the rhythm of life between the stars, the humans knew they'd forever be marked by what they'd done here. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy wouldn't be quite so eager to underestimate them again. And so they continued, their ship a lone beacon in the vast darkness of space, driven not by destiny, but by sheer, undeniable human will.